It's hour two of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com, along with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers, and Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
I can't believe we're here already. Let's go.
I know. Just flew through with stories of weddings and appendixes and everything. The first part of
I know, right?
We got right here. I'm going to play you a cut. Cooper Flanagan, some good news for the tight end that Marcus Freeman talked about today. Here's Mr. Freeman.
He's getting closer. He started to get a little bit of reps last week in practice. We'll see. We're going to try to add a couple more reps to him in practice to try to work up that capacity of how much he can do in the game. And you know, again, it's the value, right? Like, we need to make sure that when he's back and ready to roll, we can get the most value out of Cooper Flanagan. He would be a huge addition when he's ready, you know, and I don't know if it'll be this week, next week, but he's getting closer. And right now it's just not the injury anymore as much as the capacity to, you know, give us what we need on the football field. But he's an impact player. And so when we're able to get him back, you'll see him out there on the field for sure.
All right, so things trending in the right direction for Cooper Flanagan, who made the injury report as a questionable guy after tearing his Achilles in the Sugar Bowl last year. So, I don't know, Vince, how big a news is this?
I think that he would be the second best tight end on the roster if he's healthy. And, you know, that's an upgrade, right? I think the Washington kid is decent. He did not have a great game. Like, he's been steady throughout the season. He did not have a great game against Boise. But that could be an aberration. So I'm not going to, you know, knock the kid for that. But I think Cooper Flanagan's a better overall tight end. He's not just going to be in there for blocking purposes and things like that. So if he can get to 100% health, that makes this offense even better if that's possible.
And that's the thing. I just think he gives you more quality depth.
Yep.
You know, like it. I don't think you want to rush him back
Agreed.
too soon.
Agreed.
And I think that Marcus Freeman knows that. But I think that, like you said, like, Washington has been good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you had a guy like Flanigan, I think that if Flanigan was 100%, I mean, the guy played in 13 games last year. I think that he would probably have played in every game this year and would probably be the number 2 tight end right now. So
100%. Yes,
I think it's
100%.
really good news for them. And, you know, the other side of that is now Washington is going to have to continue to work even harder if he wants to keep his place out there.
And I would say, you know, considering Flanigan is questionable for this week, you know, he's not going to come in and instantly be the number 2 tight end. You know what I mean? Like, they'll slowly bring him back. I mean, it's way too early in the season to be talking red shirt and things like that. So it doesn't matter if he plays only a couple of plays, but, you know, it's just going to be a slow kind of a comeback. And like I said, when he's 100% healthy, I think he's the number 2 guy.
Josh is asking if Raridan is gone after this year. I wouldn't say it's a foregone conclusion by any means. I think his draft stock is going to be pretty interesting because he has been good, but I don't think when you look at Eli Raridan's game right now, you go, that's definitely a guy that an NFL team is going to take even within the first 4 rounds of the draft if he were to come out next year. Do you?
No, I agree. And I think he will have, let's see, as a freshman, he played in 5 games, 7 as a sophomore. He played in a bunch as a junior. So he may be out of eligibility.
Wow, I was thinking he had 1 more year.
I think that's probably what Josh was talking about. Yeah. But like, I'm just looking at his bio on the website, and you might be able to get a medical red shirt, you know, because he played in 5 games and then he suffered the season-ending injury. You know, I don't know who knows what the rules are in the NCAA for, you know, injury red shirts and things like that. But he may be able to get 1 more. But as of right now, he's played in too many games, so he would be out of eligibility.
Well, and I'm trying to remember when because 2022, so that would have been Marcus Freeman's first season. And I want to say it might have been that year because, you know, it was the 4-game redshirt exemption came in before that.
Oh, yeah.
But it was either 22 or 23 where they added that 5th game where like if you played in the bowl game, you could still.
Sure.
So technically it went from 4 to 5. So I
Right.
don't know if there's some wiggle room there,
Sure.
that kind of thing. So
Like I said, with the season-ending injury kind of thing, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I don't know. And maybe he doesn't even pursue that as a potential. Maybe he's done with college. You know what I mean? Maybe he's just mentally done with college. It's time to move on to the next level. But yeah, that will be interesting to see if that's something that he wants to try to pursue.
for sure. Okay, describe CJ Carr's game against Boise State in one word.
I would say, now this is for CJ, right? It was
Yes,
average.
this
It was
is
average.
Just CJ. Yeah.
You know,
or for CJ.
Yeah, like that was an average game for CJ Carr. And so I'll say average here. He's been playing on another level the first 4 games that he's been allowed to actually, play. So maybe you don't want to count the Miami game because he wasn't really even allowed to really do a whole lot. But the next 3 games, he was playing at another level. He dropped back a little bit, and he'll be the first one to tell you about it. He was not happy with his performance, but it was still better than, like, his numbers were still not terrible, in this game. I mean, he still, completed 65% of his passes. He didn't play terrible. He played average, and this was a little bit of a dip. I fully anticipate he'll be back because, like, some of the throws that he missed, we've seen him make in the first 4 games. Like, it's not like, oh, I know he can make it. I've seen it in practice, whatever. We've seen it in games. You know what I mean? So, like, a little bit of a dip. I think he'll be right back to where he needs to be.
That's it. My word was solid.
Yeah.
Like average, solid, whatever you want to call it. I mean, he was still 15 of 23. Didn't quite get to 200 yards, but no turnovers. Was never sacked.
Right.
And, again, did he play his best game? No, but he played well enough. This kind of goes back to what Marcus Freeman was talking about last week when he was talking about Carr and his competitive. He played well enough for Notre Dame to win. They left some points on the field out there, especially with that drive that you get freaking fourth, or you get first and goal at the 1, and then they get the penalty, and then it ends up 4th and goal at the 1, and they get nothing out of that first drive. So like played well enough to easily have another touchdown on top of that. Maybe that kind of changes the perspective. Maybe because the game was so close in the first half and you're trailing a little bit, maybe that skews it a little bit. He didn't have a bad game though by any means, and I think that's probably the best defense that he's going to face the rest of the day. They brought a lot of pressures on him, and again, didn't sack him and he didn't turn the ball over. So if that's the worst game that he has, he's going to be all right. Notre Dame's going to be all right. So
yeah, and Boise brought some exotic pressures, and they did a lot of different things to kind of confuse the young kid, and he didn't do a terrible job with it. And now he has that experience, you know what I mean? And so I think it's only going to benefit him moving forward. So we'll see how it goes. But again, he's in game 5, and if that performance is average, then I think we're sitting pretty here as Notre Dame people.
Absolutely. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame was blank in its win over Boise State.
They were, and I've been kind of tossing around some different ideas here for this one, but I mean, they were solid. They did what they needed to do. They covered the spread, right? It wasn't the smoothest game. Some of that has to do with the 24 penalties that were, thrown. It was hard to get into a rhythm, whether you're on offense or defense. But they were solid, like, they still moved up 5 spots in the AP poll. You know what I mean? So, like, they did what they needed to do to continue to move up.
Part of the reason why.
Well, I mean, yeah, fair enough. But they did what they needed to do, and I disagree with somebody in the chat that says it was sloppy.
And I've heard that. I've heard sloppy. I've heard choppy. I think that the penalties had a lot to do with that. And I don't know if, like, the fact that I obviously didn't get a chance to watch the game live because I was at Jesse's wedding, so I was able to fast forward and, kind of keep the tempo on the TV going a little bit. And I also knew the outcome. So I don't know if maybe that kind of alters what I'm thinking. But, I think, like, the sloppiness is more about the penalties to me than the way they actually played. Now, again, could they have finished that first drive off or could they have finished it better? Of course they could. And but again,
Sure.
if they do that, I think that alters a little bit when you see your first drive end the way that it did. I just thought they played. Again, like I've already said, solid for CJ Carr, but that's
what it was.
It was just a good game. They didn't make any really fatal mistakes. They created, defensively, they created a lot more turnover. They won the turnover margin by a wide spot. Offensively, they moved the ball. Really, what affected most of their drives were the penalties. That was it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And some were self-inflicted. Some of them were terrible. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like, you can watch a football play and call a penalty on every single play if you really wanted to. You know what I mean? Whether it be holding or whether it be whatever. And this crew decided to do that, and that's not great. You know what I mean? So, like, there were definitely, like, this is the best defensive performance that Notre Dame has had this year. The offense wasn't necessarily at their best, no doubt. Nobody's going to disagree with that. But they still put up 4 touchdowns, and they probably should have had at least 2 more. You know what I mean? So, like, they were moving the ball. They had, a bunch of yards offensively. I think they almost had 400 yards of offense. I mean, it was just solid. It wasn't great, but it was solid. So, it's okay. That's okay. I don't want to see more than that, but
I've opened a can of worms by mentioning penalties. Let's talk some penalties, man. Beautiful part of that game.
Man. Like, it was not good. Like, it was there's what, like I said, you can call a penalty probably on every play. That doesn't mean that you have to. And some of the ones that they called were pretty egregious and very important parts of the game as well.
Here's Marcus Freeman on how the penalties affected Notre Dame's third down situation. On third down, they faced an average of 11 yards to gain on third down out there.
I think every drive that we had, except for the one that we went for it on 4th and 8, we tried to throw it to Will Pauling, and it was at the north end, and it was incomplete. Every drive but that one that we didn't score, there was penalties or negative yardage plays, but penalties. Every drive that we didn't have one penalty, we scored a touchdown. That's not the only reason, but that's a huge reason, guys. We can't put ourselves behind the sticks because of a negative yardage play or a penalty, right? And if that's called beating Notre Dame, right? If we don't beat Notre Dame, we're going to be hard to beat, but we can't put ourselves behind the sticks because of penalties.
24 total penalties, Vince, between the two teams for 224 yards. That's blank.
And those are accepted penalties, by the way.
Accepted penalties.
Yeah, because there were a few more that weren't accepted.
Very true.
It's egregious is what it is. It's egregious. And Marcus Freeman is right. Like, some of those penalties were legit penalties, and you can't do that, and it puts you behind, off schedule and all of those different things. No doubt about it. Notre Dame averaged like 4 penalties a game, and they had 12 in this one. Like, you can't be an effective football team if you get penalized that much. No doubt about it. And he's absolutely correct. But some of those penalties were ridiculous and should have never been called too. So the whole thing was egregious. It was the play of the players, getting those penalties, but also the referees and throwing some of those.
That's the thing. It's just it's ridiculous in these ACC officiating crews. Like,
right.
How can you walk out of here and feel like you've done a good job when you're throwing close to 30 flags, like you said, because there were some that were refused as well.
Ridiculous.
24 were accepted for 224 yards. Each team had 112 yards worth of penalties in the game. And like from the very beginning, it's like, penalty. And there were definitely a lot of borderline calls. It's just, it's too much. And I hope that the ACC looks at this.
Right.
And, looks at it with a critical eye and says, couple over here, I think you probably could have just kept that in your pocket. You've got to do a better job than that. It does nothing for people trying to watch the game,
right?
Both in the stadium and, of course, on TV. It does nothing for that product. And it's beyond ridiculous. 24 accepted penalties. Ridiculous.
Yeah, that's just way too many. And like you said, some of them were ticky-tack. Some of them just weren't penalties at all. And how do you call, pass interference one time and then you don't even call it at all on another one? Like just the Micah Gilbert throw, the deep ball over the middle. Like those two guys accosted Micah Gilbert, and there's no call there. And then a guy looks at a Boise State player funny, and they get called for, defensive pass interference. So like just some really, really bad calls and some bad non-calls as well. It's like, if you're going to call it here, they call the unnecessary roughness on, Tay Johnson, right? When he kind of threw the guy down, but then like not that far after, the Boise State player just absolutely rocks a Notre Dame player out of bounds. And they don't call that. Like, just, I don't know, just not consistent either.
Here's a thought. Josh is saying the Florida State Virginia referee crew pretty good when we got to hear the reviews. Like these ACC games on ESPN, they're letting them go inside the booth. I mean, if it's a Notre Dame home game and they've got an ACC officiating crew, like, shouldn't NBC be working on that to take us inside? And
that was actually pretty cool
on as well.
That game, just to kind of hear, and they were doing that in the XFL first. You got to hear kind of the behind.
But I mean, they've been doing it in all ACC games on ESPN.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
I've seen it a few other games as well. Yeah,
that's cool. I like that because at least you kind of hear how the sausage is made, I guess is the best way to put it. But
exactly,
I like that kind of stuff. Yeah,
I do too. I would rather see that. I think that like if I'm a rules analyst, I'm probably worried that it goes too far, because I think once you do that, you really don't need the rules analyst very much anymore.
The only thing the rules analyst did in the Notre Dame game this past weekend was basically say that the referees were calling too many penalties. So
yeah,
he's not wrong.
That guy was a little sleepy though, wasn't he?
He was. Like they woke him up.
Wasn't
like, hey,
Terry McCauley? Terry McCauley, I thought was the main guy. I can't remember that guy's name. A little sleepy, it seemed like.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Vince, does it feel like there's been some flip-flopping on the Boise State narrative and how good a win this was for Notre Dame?
That's my biggest issue. I actually mentioned this on the post-game show. It's like, okay, you got to find one narrative and you got to stick with it. Either this is one of the second most winning programs since the year 2000, and they're, coming in, they're disciplined, they're the whole thing, or they're just another group of 5 team that, comes in, gets their payday, gets beat, and leaves. Like, you can't really have it both ways. You know what I mean? You can't be like, well, Boise State might pull the upset here against Notre Dame because they're such a good team and blah, 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 blah. And then after Notre Dame beats them, it's like, well, they were just a group of 6 teams.
Right. It's another group of 6 team you're supposed to beat. And that's, because John in the YouTube chat is saying, no, Boise State's a good team. I agree with that. I mean, honestly, I think that, and I'm not saying they're going to have the best offense. I do feel like they're probably the best defensive team. And I think when I look at them, maybe them and Navy are probably, well, and I would say Fran Brown, Syracuse is a well-coached team as well. The talent level kind of fluctuates there with what Brown is doing. But my point is Boise State's a really well-coached team, and you can see that in the way they play out there. And the fact that they were in the college football playoff just a year ago, and you've got the same quarterback from that team. And, you don't have the whole team back, but you've got a lot of guys who were in the college football playoff last year.
Still Boise State.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's literally, if you're going to play, like, there's a reason that, like that was the first Notre Dame Boise State meeting for one thing. Like, Boise State is probably, of any of the Power 4 teams, probably, I would say, like, Oregon and Oregon State maybe has played them more just because regionally they're much closer to them. Power 4 teams, and going back to when it was Power 5 and whatever you want to call it before that, they wanted nothing to do with Boise State after that Fiesta Bowl win that Boise State had over Oklahoma. What's that been? Maybe 17, 18 years ago at this point. But they have sustained success through a lot of different coaches. They're a very good program, and again, a very well-coached team. And I'm surprised at kind of like the, Notre Dame, you're supposed to win that game and that whole thing. It felt like it flipped fairly soon to me.
Yeah, 100%. And, you definitely get that when it comes to Notre Dame, because remember all the people calling for Arkansas that they were going to beat Notre Dame. You can't go into SEC country. And then when they left, well, Arkansas sucks, let's fire the coach. Like, you know what I mean? So that's a Notre Dame situation, frankly. But
again, like Boise State, when you look at the way Boise State plays and is coached compared to Arkansas, Now, Arkansas has a few better athletes on their roster, but in terms of how they're coached, how they play, Boise State, clearly the better team between the two to me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
They can play defense for one thing.
Right. 100%. Right.
Okay, so Wildcat package. We saw it rear its head once again on that fourth and goal. Fourth and goal at the one play. Are you in or out on Wildcat? What do you want to see from this at this point?
Well, first of all, as a whole, I'm out because I've never been a fan of the Wildcat formation. I realized that, last year with Riley Leonard running the football was something similar to a Wildcat situation because you're directly snapping the ball and you've got guys lead blocking and he's running the football and everybody on the planet knows it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that situation, and they tried to tweak the Wildcat, and they've got CJ Carr lead blocking for Jeremiah Love. That makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense. Mike Denbrock has done a great job of game planning and calling plays, and especially the last couple of weeks, he's overthinking it. Like he's really overthinking it when it comes to this Wildcat formation, dude. Just CJ Carr under center, hand it off to Jeremiah Love, or let CJ Carr do play action and throw it to somebody. You've got such a better chance of making this happen than doing that.
And I know Marcus Freeman was asked about this today. I don't have the cut. I can play it on tomorrow's show. We can kind of talk about it. You won't be here, but we can talk about it. Why does CJ Carr need to be on the field? What are you proving? Like, as soon as you line up in that formation, everyone knows what's going on. It doesn't matter where CJ Carr is at that point. And to have him as your lead blocker, I would rather just have CJ Carr off the field and put Jadarian Price
100%.
out there with him if you want a lead blocker for him.
100%.
Or Jabron Payne for that matter.
Yes.
Whoever it is.
100%. Just get him off the field. Just take him off the field. Because putting him out as a wide receiver doesn't do any good for you.
Yeah.
Because you're losing your hat advantage.
Yeah.
So take him off the field completely. Bring in somebody that's actually going to lead block. And you can still do whatever package that you want to do. I still say scrap the whole thing and just run a play. But, if you insist on doing it, 13 needs to be on the sideline, period.
Exactly.
Period.
Exactly.
Or maybe that's, your opportunity to bring in the backup quarterback, I guess. I don't know. But
that's still kind of that to me is the question. If you're going to keep the quarterback on the field, why don't you just maybe have Kenny Minchie out there?
But do you want him lead blocking too? I don't want him lead block either.
I would rather have a Kenny Minchie package, I guess.
Fair. Okay.
I should say. But if you're really going to ask a quarterback to lead block, wouldn't you rather have Minchie do it than CJ Carr? Why are you asking your quarterback,
right,
regardless of who it is? Why are you asking your quarterback to do a freaking, hey, let's run an ISO play behind the quarterback? Great decision.
Yeah, bring in Justin Fisher. He can play quarterback and lead block for you too.
I'm done. I'm done with the Wildcat.
Yep.
I just don't think they're getting out of it what they thought they were going to get out of it, because again, like they're not doing anything off it. You're like, in that situation, Jeremiah Love is getting the football. You don't anticipate the quarterback being the lead blocker, but you're not gonna, like Jordan. I've seen people mention Jordan Faison. Okay, and somebody just mentioned Jordan Faison in the chat. You put him out there, you bring him in motion, you fake a handout, like do something to, even if it's just eye candy, or have that as an alternative to just handing the ball to Jeremiah Love.
There's a million different options.
They're just way too basic.
Yeah.
And when you add the wrinkle of having your quarterback as the lead blocker, it makes less than 0 sense.
Well, and the play that they had the penalty on, I believe, was third down, and they ran the Wildcat and they put CJ Carr in motion, and and luckily they jumped offside, or it was at a false start or whatever. But just terrible. You don't have the offensive disadvantage that you think you do in order to run the Wildcat. You got a good offense that you should be able to pick up a yard just running your offense.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Here's an alternative. it does, and I'm not talking about Wildcat. I'm talking about a traditional run a play. How about go back to Jabron Payne like he was a couple of years ago as your third down back? Remember when he was able to get those tough yards? I realize it was a different running back coach, but I'd rather see that than the Wildcat at this point.
I think there's a kind of a laundry list of things I'd rather see that aren't the Wildcat at this point. It's time to shelve that particular plan unless you just set it up completely differently.
Concur.
It's time to run the regular offense, man.
Fill in the blank. Penn State head coach James Franklin complaining about travel after losing to UCLA is blank.
Is a page right out of Lincoln Riley's playbook is what that is. And I think it's hilarious. I feel like they called each other and exchanged notes on how to explain away a bad loss away from home that happens to be in another time zone. I mean, I listened to the entire post-game press conference from Franklin, and it was just one excuse after another. And, I'm not overly surprised by the fact that people want his head on a platter.
Yeah, it feels like they wrote that playbook together, like they came
right.
Like,
seriously,
okay, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? Here's what I'm going to say. Look, UCLA had just traveled to Evanston the week before and lost to Northwestern the week before. And they come home. It was Penn State's first trip out of Happy Valley since the Orange Bowl, losing to Notre Dame last year. They hadn't had to travel at all. Notre Dame goes to California, of course, every year. They've already been to Miami this year. Like they've been back, obviously, back to Miami since the Orange Bowl. And it just, I guess when Penn State flies to California, they've got to take a bigger plane because, they're taking, I don't know if it's more people or equipment or whatever else. I would think that they would be, sending the truck out to the West Coast at the beginning of the previous week or whatever. But so apparently when they fly to California, they've got to bus down to Harrisburg because they've got a bigger runway on their airport. And this is like the thing that he's complaining about. We got to take a bus and then get on a plane. It's like join the rest of the world of people who have to travel,
right.
I realize the coaches had nothing to do with these TV contracts, like they didn't sign off on it, but stop complaining about it already because guess what? You've got it. You're probably going to California every year now because you've got USC and UCLA. You're going to have to take some longer road trips. And again, Notre Dame has been making these trips every year as an
exactly.
So if you're Penn State and you don't like the big check that you're getting from the Big Ten, just get out of the Big Ten and become an independent again and see how that goes for you when you can make your own schedule and see what your budget looks like. I'm tired of all these coaches complaining about it. You got to deal with it. Like find a way. All you're doing is sending a bad message to your team. You're sending the wrong messaging to your team because all you've got now is excuses about why you lose. And that's all it is. Whiners cry. That's all it is.
And your boss, your president, and your athletic director voted to bring them into the league. That's on you, man.
Yes.
Like it was a unanimous vote to bring them in. So you can't complain about having to go out there and play a game when you voted to bring them in. That's on you.
Apparently in the Big Ten, traveling is for losers, is what it comes to.
Apparently. Should have thought about that before you brought in all these West Coast teams.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I mean, you also lost at home to Oregon.
Exactly. And you know what? You could even kind of explain that away. Oregon's a really good team. They're in the top 5. I get it, even though it was enjoyable to watch them lose at home during a whiteout and all those different things. No doubt about it. But you could at least explain that away. There's no explaining away UCLA. None.
Absolutely none.
UCLA hadn't even had a lead on anyone all season until they led wire to wire in the Penn State game.
Crazy.
Come on,
so let me ask you this. They fell from number 7 in the polls out of the AP rankings this week. They are still number 22 in the coaches poll. Does Penn State deserve to be ranked after losing to UCLA?
It's hard because that is a deep, deep fall, obviously. And with Notre Dame when they were 0-2, they were still ranked. You know, there was a lot of hatred going on there, and even though they lost to 2 top 5 teams and by a total of 4 points and all of those kinds of things. The problem for me, if I'm trying to defend Penn State or Texas for that matter, it's hard because we're going to be sitting in double digits in October. It's going to be a double-digit October date, and both Texas and Penn State, neither one of them have a Power 4 win. Neither one.
That's true.
That's hard to defend, man. Like, that's hard to defend. That's the football season's almost half over, and you haven't beaten a Power 4 team yet. That's not a top 25 team.
That's very true. That's a great point, because, by the way, this is 2 weeks in a row we haven't seen our old friend Penn State Sports Talk, who used to come in here and scold us. And just a week and a half ago, he was telling us how Penn State was 3-0. Looks a little bit different today, I think, when you're looking up at that big L to a team that was 0-4. And I mean, I agree. Like, it is a steep fall from 7 to out of the rankings.
It is.
But Jerry Neuheisel became offensive coordinator. He had like 2 days to put an offensive game plan together, and he didn't just put together an offensive game plan. He changed the whole offense in 2 days' time. Nico Iamaleava, how do you say his name? I can never say his name right.
Iamaleava.
Nico definitely played his best game of the year. Like, I think Jerry Neuheisel, you've obviously got an interim head coach. I think Jerry Neuheisel may have just made a case for himself as the head coach when this whole thing is said and done.
Why not? Like, what have you got to lose if you're UCLA at this point?
I know. But I mean, I do think Penn State's probably better than Iowa State and Arizona State, who are still in the polls. Cincinnati in there after knocking off Iowa State, by the way, handing them their first loss. Cincinnati's becoming a little bit of a darling. But I mean, the point that you made, you still haven't beaten a Power 4 team. So until you do, and you just lost to one of the worst Power 4 teams there was. So until you do, I don't think you probably deserve to be ranked.
Yeah. I mean, they'll climb back in at some point, I would think, because they're not a terrible football team. They're just not an elite football team. So they'll probably crawl back in at some point. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of a wake-up call if you're a Texas fan or a Penn State fan. Like, you're not playing well enough. You go out to UCLA, you lose to a team that doesn't even have a head coach, and you go to Florida and you lose to a team that wants to fire their head coach. Like, exactly. You can't lose to those teams. I don't care if it's on the road. That doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point about Texas, I think that's kind of where it's at. They really haven't shown it's what's amazing to me right now is, now granted, Clemson obviously won over the weekend. Penn State, Texas, and Clemson were all considered national title contenders.
They're all top 5 teams.
All ranked in the top 5 at the beginning of the season. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And just nuts to see where they are right now. Because again, now, does Notre Dame have 2 losses? Yes. But comparing Notre Dame's 2 losses to those other teams' 2 and 3 losses, completely different area codes that they're in when you make those comparisons.
And we're sitting here and we're complaining about the Wildcat for Notre Dame, rightfully so, all of the things that we just said. But how would you like to be Penn State right now? And they had 4th and 3 from like the 3-yard line, and they just decided to run the quarterback up the middle.
Yeah.
What a terrible, terrible play call in the final play of that game, where you had an opportunity to tie up that game.
Yeah.
And that was your play call.
Especially with that quarterback.
Correct.
Running.
Like, he's supposed to be this, first-round draft pick in the NFL, and you don't even let him throw the football. That tells me pretty much everything I need to know about Drew Aller and what his coaching staff thinks of him.
Yep, exactly. Crazy weekend. A crazy weekend of college football. It's, again, like when you look at where those 3 teams are right now and what this season is, Iamaleava. I'm going to have to go find a pronunciation.
There's a lot of consonants, a lot of vowels, a lot of syllables.
All right, Vince, I will talk to you later, sir.
Yes, sir.
He's Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stearns, and we will talk to you later. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.